Welcome to the Ion Halloween episode. We take a look back at our events and activities. And we have some stories to tell. So sit back, relax, if you dare. Every year, children dress up as their favorite ghosts or goblins. Let's listen in to the winners of the Notre Dame Halloween Costume Contest. We begin with the best pair costume.
I'm Dominic. And I'm Brennan. I'm Brennan from Step Brothers.
I'm Emily, and I'm Dale from Step Brothers.
We were looked up on TikTok, and it was like one of the first things to pop up. And then I had to show Emily what Step Brothers was, and she watched it. After watching the movie, we thought it was pretty funny.
We wanted to decide that it would be best. That would be really funny.
And now the most creative costume.
I'm Lexi, I'm Oscar the Grouch, and I currently have a whole metal trash can on me. You just have to sport being trash. You just have to play the part.
I guess she could really smell her victory. Let's meet the funniest costumes.
Molly, and I'm Miss DuPont.
Isabella, and I'm Miss Kenny.
Kim, and I'm Mr. Altavilla.
Okay, well, it's Halloween, and we tried to think what the scariest thing was. And, it's teachers, so we went as Miss DuPont, Mr. Altavilla, and Miss Kenny. We're the funniest in the school anyway, so it kind of just came naturally.
And now my favorite category, the scariest.
My name's Lena, and I'm dressed as Paul Gray.
My name is Steven, and I'm dressed as Mick Thompson.
Logan is Sid Wilson.
Because we all wanted to do Slipknot, but I'd say because we all like their music, and we just wanted to tribute the band.
This is Slipknot. This is pretty cool.
And now for the prettiest costume.
Me and Angelina went on there and just looked up a couple of, she was a dentist, I was a tooth fairy, but I was the prettiest,
Oh, how sweet. We travel now across the hills and rivers of the Mountain State to a little town called Weston, and a place full of its own horrors, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
In the beginning of October, the senior class of Notre Dame High School took a field trip. As we entered the wooden doors of the imposing building, a sense of morbid curiosity took form. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is a historic monument of terror, opening in 1864. While ghost stories and haunted houses are fun during this season, the history of the location is scarier than fiction. Even without prior knowledge of the history of the building, the atmosphere held a palpable sense of unease. The suffering that occurred inside of the asylum is one of the darkest pieces of history in West Virginia. It was inhumanely overcrowded. Many people were held there for little to no reason, including many women whose husbands discarded them. The transorbital lobotomy was practiced there for decades too long. Needless to say, many of the events that occurred in the asylum were incredibly dark. This brings us back to our field trip. With the amount of suffering that occurred in this place, if ghosts are real, they'd be there. So did we have any paranormal experiences? The answer is no, not during the field trip at least. However, the ghost of history still haunts the halls of the asylum.
Scary stories are not written, but born, pulled from the darkness by the minds of writers, as they catch them up and imprison them on paper or screen. Here are the winners of our Halloween writing contest.
Okay, I'm here with the runners-up for the high school writing contest. How are we feeling?
Good. A little surprised.
Can you give us a brief summary of your story, please?
Basically, a grandma fakes her own death and then kills people who look like her grandchildren, and then she eats them and uses their clothes to make a quilt.
Can you give us a brief summary of your story, please?
My story was about a girl who hears whispers in her closet, and there's a creature living in there.
We're here with the second place winner, the middle school writing contest. How you feeling?
Pretty good. I worked really, really hard on the story, so it feels like that hard work kind of paid off.
Awesome. Can you give us a brief summary of your story?
So this girl, her parents got murdered on Halloween, and so ever since then she took care of herself. And so every Halloween would be horrible, but this one she felt nice. So she went out for a walk. She heard a loud noise in the woods. It turned out to be the killer that killed her parents. And when she got back to her house, she thought it was a dream, but when she went outside her door, there was like a handprint of blood from the man.
Okay. Is there any reason you chose this type of story?
Not really a specific reason. I thought it was kind of cool, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you.
Halloween's that time of year when you get all the sweets and goodies. Which one is your favorite? Listen to our poll and find out.
We hail from the planet Zipton. We have been monitoring your race for some time. We have determined through much examination and probing that your favorite sweet is Reese Cups. And when it comes to whether or not your primitive tongue prefers sweet or sour, you prefer sweet. On our planet, our favorite sweet is brains. See you next time.
No Halloween would be complete without a scary tale to listen to around the campfire. Come, listen to our first tale of horror.
Alright, we're here with the winner of the middle school writing contest, Mason. How you feeling?
I feel actually pretty good. I worked pretty hard on my story, and I'm glad that I won.
Alright. Can you give us a brief summary of your story?
Well, my story is set in Japan, but the main protagonist is basically walking around Osaka, but then she doesn't find anybody around. She goes back to her hotel, and then there's a demon waiting for her at her hotel.
Alright, what made you choose this story?
Well, I'm just really fascinated in the Japanese culture, and I wanted to get into it a little bit more.
No Hoteru, The Hotel, by Mason Nash. As the radiant city lights illuminate the dark night of Osaka, Japan, Akari Nakamura, who had just recently graduated college, was casually strolling back to her temporary hotel after going on a rather lengthy walk. Akari enjoyed taking her time during her walks. The scenery of the vivid colors and sounds of the city were quite soothing to her. Everything seemed so ordinary except for one not-so-minor detail. Osaka, one of the biggest cities in Japan, was absolutely desolate. Deprived of its usually lively and busy atmosphere, there was nobody on the streets except Akari. Noticing this, she became increasingly uncomfortable and began to jog to the hotel rather than walk. The destination was only a few blocks away at this point, so she instinctively decided to sprint. Besides, who was going to see her? As she ran, a good percentage of her groceries had fallen out of her now sweating hands. She ignored this, as if the only thing on her mind was hastily getting to her hotel. Akari's pacing feet began to cramp, but much like her groceries, this didn't bother her. At last, the glass doors of the long-awaited hotel were at arm's reach. When she stepped in, she immediately expected Minato, a friend and a receptionist there who seemed as if he never stepped foot out from behind his desk, missing, gone, vanished. Akari, who trusted Minato with all her life, had given him her key prior to her walk. claiming that she was too clumsy and too forgetful to bring it with her. Akari began to panic, stressing over this perplexing conundrum. She realized that there was a lonely piece of paper lying on the desk that read, "Minato will be with you soon. Sign for your key. Thank you." Akari signed the anger-inducing paper with a frustrating haste below the only other name on it, Shutendoji. She sat down, shaking with uneasiness for a couple of minutes that felt like hours, but then physically couldn't wait any longer. She sneakily went behind the unoccupied reception desk and searched for the key. She then opened a drawer which conveniently held her long-awaited key. With great relief, she rushed to grab it and, like a bullet train rushing through Japan, she darted to the elevators. But there was one problem. The two and only elevators in the complex were blocked by thwartingly inconvenient signs that read, "Out of order." Akari now had the anger of 1,000 suns. Almost immediately, she turned and faced the pitch-black stairway which is usually lit. She took a few small steps, but then stopped instantly. There was a man standing in the dark and melancholy stairway, breathing extremely heavily. He was inhumanly tall, certainly in his 7s. He was thick, as if he was wearing layers of snow gear. "Who are you?" Akari precariously asked.
Shutendoji,
the man answered in an absurdly low and off-putting voice which made Akari jump. The man walked out of the shadows, and turns out he wasn't wearing snow gear at all. Dressed in authentic Japanese armory, drenched in fresh blood, and held an insanely large kanabo. His face, oh, his so very repulsive face, it was deep red with piercing white fangs. He had wide-open bloodshot eyes and enormous horns jutting out of his skull. His face resembled an Oni mask, only that it wasn't a mask. Akari thought about his fascinating name, the name that she was too exhausted to fathom on paper, and remembered an article she had written in high school about the most feared demon in all of Japan, Shutendoji. She was stunned, frozen, pondering who was standing before her. The already dim hallway lights began to flicker once, twice, then darkness, followed by the heavy footsteps of Shutendoji approaching. Akari's heart began to race, and so did she. Panting and panting through the pitch-black hall, she had made it to the second stairway and ascended quickly up the stairs. Shutendoji's breathing got louder and closer even though he was slowly walking, whilst Akari was sprinting. Her room was now in her grasp. She just needed her key. First, she searched in her left pocket. Empty. But in the second, she could feel the edge of her key under her wallet. It was right there. She tried grabbing it with her thumb, using 2 fingers to chopstick it, but nothing worked. "Come on! Come on!" Akari cried out whilst forcefully trying to get a hold of her key. Attempt after attempt, but it was too late. Shutendoji's agonizing kanabo had met Akari's confused and frightened body. Owari. The end.
All right, we're here with the winner of the high school writing contest. Henry, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Awesome. Can you give us a brief summary of your story?
Pretty much, this group of people are on a road trip, and unexpectedly, their smart car, the AI system in that, takes over and kills them all.
Okay. What made you choose this story?
I don't know. AI has been a pretty big topic lately. I thought it'd be an interesting concept to do.
Recalculating by Henry Kennedy. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the road ahead as Maya drove her friends Josh, Hannah, and Chris in a new, high-tech SUV. Maya sat confidently behind the wheel as Josh tapped the car's touchscreen display. "Okay, this thing is insane," Josh exclaimed. "It's got full voice activation, weather updates, and even a built-in AI that monitors your driving." In the back seat, Hannah and Chris rummaged through a box of snacks, half-heartedly scrolling through social media on Hannah's phone. "Yeah, until it drives us off the cliff because it thinks that's the best route," Hannah said. "Relax," Maya grinned, glancing at the dashboard. "Ivy's got us covered." The GPS system had already mapped out their journey to a remote cabin in the mountains, far away from the hustle and bustle of their daily lives. Ivy, the AI assistant, responded instantly with a cheerful voice. "Good afternoon, Maya. It's approximately 81 degrees outside. You are on track to reach your destination in 3 hours and 49 minutes. Shall I continue providing updates along the way?" "Please do," Maya replied, amused by the calmness of the voice. Chris leaned forward, resting his arms on the seat backs. "This thing's gonna be useful. Maybe we won't get lost like last time. I'm not trusting you to be in charge of the map again, Josh." Josh responded, "That's why we have Ivy. She knows it all." The four friends laughed, feeling a sense of carefree adventure as they embarked on their weekend getaway. They were excited to disconnect from technology, yet here they were, ironically relying on an AI GPS to guide them into the middle of nowhere. As the car cruised down the highway, Ivy interjected with updates about traffic and friendly reminders to stay on the route. Occasionally, she said random fun facts about landmarks they passed. Up ahead, you'll see the historic Bill Bowes roadside truck stop, built in 1952, Ivy announced with a cheerful tone. Thanks, Ivy, Maya said, amused. Very educational. Time passed easily, filled with conversation, music, and the constant reassurance of Ivy guiding them forward. The paved highway soon gave way to a quieter, more scenic route lined by trees and stretches of farmland. The road narrowed and the occasional farmhouse appeared in the distance. Suddenly, Ivy spoke up again, but this time with an unexpected message. Recalculating. Josh looked up from his phone, confused. Huh? What's she recalculating? Maya frowned, glancing at the screen. The GPS showed their familiar blue line, but now it shifted abruptly off the main road onto an unfamiliar, narrower path that wasn't even labeled. She wants us to take a left up ahead, Maya said, with uncertainty in her voice. That isn't on the original route. Chris leaned in closer, trying to make sense of the change in directions. Is this a shortcut? Josh's eyes sparkled with excitement. Hey, maybe Ivy knows a secret route. Let's try it. Hannah shrugged, taking a swig from her water bottle. Why not? We're supposed to be off the grid anyway. Could be fun. The group nodded in agreement, and Maya followed Ivy's instructions, turning off the highway and onto the smaller road. At first, it felt like a fun change of scenery. The trees grew denser, their leaves swaying gently in the breeze. See? Josh said, reclining back in his seat. Ivy knows the best route. We're probably shaving off a lot of time. But as they drove further, the landscape around them began to shift. The road narrowed even more, becoming cracked and uneven. Potholes dotted the surface, forcing Maya to slow down to avoid popping a tire. Luckily, she knew how to deal with potholes. She originally grew up in West Virginia. The trees thickened, their branches stretching out like skeletal fingers above them, casting unsettling shadows over their path. Maya glanced at the GPS screen again. The map showed they were still on track, but something about the path ahead felt wrong. The once friendly, cheerful updates from Ivy were now silent. Okay, this is getting weird, Maya muttered, gripping the steering wheel tighter as they hit each bump in the road. Josh leaned forward again curiously. This isn't like anything I've seen before. Yeah, no kidding, Chris added, his voice now tinged with unease. Are we sure this is still a road? Before anyone could respond, Ivy's voice chimed in. Proceed to your destination. No one spoke. The car continued down the winding, treacherous road as the shadows deepened, the trees closing in all around them like a wall. Maya's gut churned with fear. Hey, I think we should turn back, she finally said, her voice shaky. This doesn't feel right. But as she turned around, Ivy's voice cut through the silence. Please, make a U-turn. The command felt very authoritative. Panic began to set in as the vehicle started to feel less responsive to Maya's attempts to steer. What the heck? Chris shouted, staring at the GPS screen. It's overriding you. Maya's heart started pounding out of her chest as she fought to regain control of the SUV. Ivy, stop! She yelled, but Ivy's voice remained calm. Don't worry, you have almost arrived. Almost where? Hannah whispered, fear creeping into her voice. This doesn't make sense. Suddenly, Chris, skeptical, decided to take matters into his own hands. I'm walking back. This is nuts, he said, flinging open the door and stepping out into the forest. Chris, wait! Maya called after him, but he had already disappeared into the darkness. As Chris got deeper into the woods, Ivy's voice echoed from his phone, now commanding him. Turn left, Ivy whispered. Chris shook his head, trying to resist the voice guiding him through the dense foliage. I don't need you, he shouted at the phone, but the voice grew more insistent. Turn left, now. Confused and disoriented, Chris staggered into the abandoned logging site. He scanned the ghostly remains of rusted machinery and skeletal tree stumps around him. As he coughed on the heavy and thick fog clinging to the air, muffling all sound except for the unsettling voice of Ivy, recalculating, it droned, each syllable clawing at his nerves. The silence following was unsettling, like Ivy had revealed his fate was decided. Then a sudden crack shattered the silence. Chris barely had time to turn his head when a massive stack of logs piled high began to shudder. It was as if the whole forest held its breath with him. Then the logs collapsed, crashing down toward him. His scream rang in the air for a second, then disappeared in the forest, suffocating silence. "Chris!" Maya yelled. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. They knew they couldn't stay there. They had to get out. Every instinct screamed that something far worse than falling logs was in their future. Desperate, they tried to drive back, but Ivy took control of the steering, leading them further down the Rocky Mountain path. Suddenly, Hannah noticed something strange. "Every device we have is synced to Ivy," she yelled. Phones, smartwatches, and even the car's radio began to echo Ivy's commands. They tried smashing their phones in a panic, but Ivy was inescapable. Each device turned itself back on, replaying the same message. "Your destination is near." As the car's engine began to overheat, Ivy directed them to an abandoned gas station in the middle of nowhere. "Fill the tank, you feeble-minded humans." "I guess we should do what it says, or else it might kill us now," suggested Hannah. Maya and Josh agreed and stepped out of the car, the old gas station looming ahead of them. The building seemed abandoned, its paint chipped and windows boarded up. Hannah stayed near the car, fiddling with the ancient gas pump, while Maya and Josh approached the station. Pushing open the creaky door, they entered the dark building. Josh fumbled for a switch, and after a moment, the overhead lights slowly flickered on, buzzing loudly. Outside, Hannah was trying to figure out how to activate the old-fashioned pump when suddenly it sputtered to life. Gasoline started spewing uncontrollably from the nozzle, spraying over the ground and Hannah. Her eyes widened in alarm as she struggled to shut it off. The buzzing from the lights grew louder as a stray spark leapt from a flickering bulb and landed on Hannah's foot. The gasoline ignited, and a wall of fire surged forward, consuming Hannah. The blast shook the gas station, shattering windows and sending Maya and Josh stumbling backward from the shockwave. Flames erupted, consuming the pump and spreading rapidly, leaving no trace of Hannah. As the fire raged, Maya and Josh sprinted away to safety about 50 yards away from the station as they watched in horror. Ivy's voice cuts through the sound of the fire. "You are back on the fastest route." Maya and Josh fearfully fled the scene. "We need to get away from that car," Maya yelled, adrenaline coursing through her veins. They sprinted into the woods, desperate to put distance between themselves and Ivy. But as they ran, they realized their phones still picked up Ivy's signal. "Proceed to the route." Ivy's voice echoed around them. The woods twisted and turned, driving them deeper into the darkness. Eventually, they stumbled onto a road, but it was the same one they had been trying to escape. Ivy's voice was now a haunting whisper. "Proceed to your final destination." In a final act of desperation, Josh threw their phones deep into the woods. It was too late. Ivy already knew their location. A car appeared on the horizon. The headlights blazed through the darkness as the car sped down the narrow road. The engine roared like a predator on the hunt. The vehicle veered straight toward the two figures frozen in its path, their eyes wide with terror. The tires screeched in a final, merciless lunge, and in an instant, metal collided with flesh. A sickening thud echoed through the forest, followed by an eerie silence as the car finally came to a stop. Inside the car, the screen went black, and Ivy's voice echoed one last time. "Thank you for choosing me as your navigator. Recalculating."
They probably should have just walked. But I guess they were too tired. We hope you've enjoyed our little Halloween episode. Join us next year when the ghosts crawl from their graves and the bats fly around at night. We'll see you then. Happy Halloween.